The crystalline spires of Oria's capital city Lumina shimmered in the golden light of dawn. Ambassador Sarah Nall stood before the enormous windows of the Hall of Unity, watching as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the legendary crystal forests that surrounded the city. The light fractured and danced, casting rainbow patterns across the polished marble floor. For 5,000 years, this view had remained unchanged, a testament to the enduring peace of her world. Behind her, the members of the Council of Nine were slowly filing into the chamber, their flowing robes of iridescent silk rustling softly. Sarah turned to face them, smoothing the front of her own ceremonial garment, a deep sapphire blue that signified her status as Oria's senior diplomat. Ambassador Nall. First Elder. Thorin greeted her with a formal bow. His silver hair was bound in traditional braids, and the wrinkles around his eyes had deepened since their last meeting. "You've called an emergency session of the Council. This is unprecedented in my 50 years of service." Sarah returned the bow, ignoring the subtle reproach in his tone. "These are unprecedented times, First Elder." The remaining 7 counselors took their seats around the circular crystal table, their expressions ranging from curiosity to poorly concealed irritation. Oria's governing body was not accustomed to urgency. Decisions were made with careful deliberation, sometimes spanning years of thoughtful dialogue and philosophical debate. The concept of emergency action was nearly foreign to their culture. "I apologize for disrupting your morning meditations." Sarah began activating the holographic display embedded in the table. "But I've received troubling reports from our Outer Rim observers." The projection shimmered to life, showing a distant star system. "This is Vespera, one of our trading partners in the Auriga sector." The image zoomed in to reveal a verdant green planet, then shifted to real-time footage. Gasps echoed through the chamber as columns of smoke became visible, rising from the planet's surface. Several cities were clearly burning. "These images were transmitted 12 hours ago." Sarah continued, her voice steady, despite the horror on display. "The Vesperans are under attack by a fleet of unknown origin. They've managed to evacuate approximately 30% of their population, but their defensive capabilities are failing." Counselor Lyra, the youngest member of the 9, leaned forward. "Who would do this? Vespera has no enemies. They're philosophers and artists like us." "The aggressors identify themselves as the Karvok Dominion." Sarah switched the display to show sleek, predatory ships with distinctive crimson markings. "Intelligence suggests they're a recently emerged power from the Cygnus Arm. They appear to be on a path of systematic conquest." First Elder Thorin's expression darkened. "And what does this have to do with Oria? We maintain our neutrality in all conflicts as we have for millennia. It is the cornerstone of our society." Sarah had anticipated this response. She touched another control, and the holographic display shifted again, revealing a projected path of expansion. A red line extended from Vespera directly toward Oria. "Based on their current trajectory and the communications we've intercepted, Oria appears to be their next target. The Dominion specifically mentioned our crystal forests and what they call our weakness as reasons for conquest." Silence fell over the council chamber. For generations, Oria had been protected by its reputation and its policy of open cultural exchange and goodwill. The concept of preparing for war was antithetical to their very existence. Councillor Thomas, the Minister of Heritage, was the first to speak. "This is merely speculation, Ambassador. Perhaps they seek only to trade, and these unfortunate events on Vespera are the result of some misunderstanding." "I wish that were true," Sarah replied, her voice soft but firm. "But there's more." With a gesture, she brought up a new hologram, a recorded message. The face of a Vesperan elder appeared, his pale blue features contorted with fear and exhaustion. "People of Oria." The elder began, his voice trembling. "The Karvok show no mercy. They've bombarded our cities without warning or provocation. Their demands are simple: complete surrender and subjugation. They value our resources, not our lives. The image shuddered as an explosion sounded in the background. We were like you once, peaceful, trusting. We believed dialogue could resolve any conflict. We were wrong. If you're receiving this, prepare yourselves. They come for your crystal forest next. The transmission abruptly ended. Sarah deactivated the hologram. This message was received 3 hours ago. We've had no further contact with Vespera. The council chamber erupted in anxious murmurs. First, Elder Thorn raised his hand, and silence gradually returned. Even if this threat is real, he said, what would you have us do? Ambassador Aurea has no military. We have never needed one. Sarah inhaled deeply. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the reason she had spent the last several nights poring over ancient records and classified historical archives. The Orion Compact holds that we shall never raise arms against another sentient species, she acknowledged. This is the foundation of our society, and I do not suggest we abandon it. She paused, gathering her courage. However, there is nothing in our laws that prohibits us from seeking help. First, Elder Thorn narrowed his eyes. What kind of help could possibly address this situation without violating our principles? Earth. The single word hung in the air, like a forbidden utterance. Several counselors visibly stiffened. The humans, Counselor Lyra's voice was incredulous. You cannot be serious. I am entirely serious, Sarah countered. Humanity has maintained diplomatic relations with Aurea for over a millennium, though we rarely have cause for direct contact. They are signatories to the Galactic Accords and have demonstrated reliable ethical constraints in their military actions. They are Deathworlders, Counselor Thomas almost spat the word. Evolved on a planet of predators and natural disasters. Their entire psychology is shaped by conflict and survival against impossible odds. We cannot invite such volatility to our peaceful world. Sarah had expected this reaction. Earth's reputation was complex throughout the galaxy. Humans were respected for their resilience, adaptability, and technological innovation. They were also feared for their capacity for violence when threatened, a trait that had earned them the somewhat derogatory title of Deathworlders among more peaceful species. I've studied human history extensively, Sarah said, meeting Tomas's gaze steadily. Yes, they have a complex relationship with warfare, but they also possess a profound capacity for empathy and a deeply ingrained instinct to protect the vulnerable. They have repeatedly intervened to defend peaceful worlds from aggression, asking only for friendship and cultural exchange in return. First Elder. Thorin stroked his beard thoughtfully. Even if what you say is true, Ambassador, how would you propose to contact them? Earth is at the far edge of the Orion Spur, nearly 3 weeks' journey by our fastest vessels. Sarah hesitated, knowing that her next revelation would be the most controversial. There is another way to reach them, a direct method that would allow us to request their help immediately. The council members exchanged confused glances. Aurea had no faster-than-light communication technology beyond standard interstellar relays, which would still take days to reach Earth. Explain yourself, Ambassador, Thorin demanded. During the Great Expansion, before Aurea embraced its current philosophy of peaceful isolation, our ancestors established emergency protocols with several worlds, including Earth. Sarah activated her personal datapad and transferred a new file to the central display. This included the creation of quantum-entangled communication nodes, what the early records call warp links. The display showed an ancient technological schema, a small, crystalline device etched with intricate patterns. This link has remained dormant for over 900 years, but it was never decommissioned. It still exists in the archives of remembrance, and according to my research, it should still function. Earth maintains their side of the link as part of their historical preservation program. The council chamber erupted again, voices rising in shock and disbelief. Thorin silenced them with a sharp gesture. You've accessed sealed historical archives without authorization, he said, his voice cold with disapproval. I accessed them with my diplomatic clearance, which is entirely within my authority. Sarah corrected him respectfully. First Elder, I understand this is unprecedented, but so is the threat we face. I am not suggesting we abandon our principles. I am suggesting we call upon allies who share our respect for life, but possess the means to defend it when words fail. Thorin was silent for a long moment, his ancient eyes studying Sarah intently. And if the humans refuse, or worse, if they use this opportunity to establish a military presence on Oria for their own purposes, then we face that challenge when it comes, Sarah replied. But, First Elder, I have studied humanity extensively. They value courage and honesty. They despise bullies and conquerors. The Karvak are everything humans have historically opposed. I believe they will help us and respect our wishes regarding their presence here afterward. The council debated for hours, philosophical arguments blending with practical concerns. Sarah remained standing, answering questions with patience and conviction. By midday, the golden light that had danced across the floor had shifted to a deeper amber. Finally, First Elder Thorin raised his hand for silence. We have deliberated. While I cannot authorize any military action that would violate our sacred principles, I recognize the urgency of the situation. He turned to Sarah. Ambassador Nall, you are permitted to activate the warp link and communicate with Earth. You may request humanitarian assistance and evacuation support. Nothing more. Sarah bowed deeply. Thank you, First Elder. As the council members filed out, Thorin lingered, approaching Sarah privately. I know you too well, young one, he said quietly. You intend to ask for more than evacuation ships. Sarah met his gaze steadily. I intend to be honest about the threat we face and allow Earth to determine what form their assistance will take. Thorin sighed. Your transparency does you credit at least. But remember, we cannot become what we have always stood against even to survive. With respect, First Elder, Sarah replied, perhaps survival and principle need not be mutually exclusive. The old Orion studied her for a long moment, then nodded once before departing. Alone in the council chamber, Sarah looked once more at the holographic images of burning Vesperan cities. Then, with determined steps, she made her way to the archives of remembrance, where a piece of forgotten technology held their only hope. The archives lay beneath the capital city, a vast labyrinth of crystalline chambers, housing millennia of Orion knowledge and artifacts. Sarah's diplomatic credentials granted her access, though the archivist's expression made it clear that her request was unusual. The Terran Warp Link. The archivist, an elderly Orion named Vel, frowned at her terminal. It hasn't been accessed ever in my lifetime. It's in Deep Storage Section Epsilon. Sarah followed Vel through the gleaming corridors, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Finally, they reached a small sealed chamber. After scanning Sarah's credentials and entering her own access codes, Vel unlocked the door. Inside, on a simple pedestal, sat an object no larger than Sarah's palm, a crystalline hexagon etched with swirling patterns that seemed to move when viewed from different angles. Embedded in its center was a small, pulsing blue light. Still powered, Vel remarked with surprise. Remarkable engineering. Can it be removed? Sarah asked. Vel nodded. It's completely self-contained. The quantum entanglement isn't dependent on location. With careful hands, Sarah lifted the ancient device. It felt warm against her skin, as if it had been waiting for this moment. Thank you, Archivist Vel, she said. This may save our world. Sarah took the warp link to her private chambers, in the diplomatic wing of the Unity Spire. The room's windows offered a panoramic view of Lumina's crystal forests, stretching to the horizon. How many generations had lived peaceful lives beneath those iridescent canopies? How many more deserved the same chance? She placed the warp link on her desk and studied the activation sequence from her research. According to the ancient records, the device was keyed to respond to Orion biorhythms, requiring only intent and touch to activate. Taking a deep breath, Sarah placed her palm flat against the crystal surface and closed her eyes, focusing her thoughts on Earth and the desperate need for contact. For several heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the device warmed beneath her hand, and the pulsing blue light brightened, expanding to surround her palm with a soft glow. A humming vibration traveled up her arm, and suddenly a projection blossomed above the device, a rotating Earth symbol, followed by a string of unfamiliar glyphs. Sarah watched with fascination as the glyphs rearranged themselves, apparently translating to Orion script. A message appeared. Quantum entanglement established. Earth Defense Organization monitoring active. Please state identity and purpose. Sarah straightened her posture and addressed the device clearly. I am Ambassador Sarah Nall of Oria, requesting urgent communication with Earth's defense authorities regarding an imminent threat to our world. The blue light pulsed more rapidly. Verification in progress. Please stand by. Sarah waited, her heart pounding. Had she made a terrible mistake? Would Earth even remember their ancient connection to Oria? Minutes passed in tense silence. Then the projection changed and a human face appeared. A woman with dark skin, short silver hair, and piercing eyes that immediately assessed Sarah with keen intelligence. This is Admiral Jade Reyes of the Earth Defense Organization. The human said, her voice remarkably clear across the vast distance. Our historians are quite excited, Ambassador Nall. This warp link hasn't been activated in over 900 years. Your timing is impeccable. I was about to enter a rather tedious budget meeting. Surprised by the casual humor, Sarah found herself momentarily at a loss for words before recovering her diplomatic composure. Admiral Reyes, I apologize for the unexpected contact. Oria faces an unprecedented threat and we are in need of assistance. Admiral Reyes's expression shifted, all traces of humor vanishing. Explain. Sarah transmitted the data she had shown the Council, the images of Vespera burning the trajectory of the Karvok fleet, the final message from the Vesperan Elder. She watched as the human's face hardened, a muscle tightening in her jaw. The Karvok Dominion, Reyes said, when the transmission ended. Yes, we've heard whispers about their emergence. Aggressive expansionists with a superiority philosophy and advanced weaponry. How long until they reach Aria? Our astronomers estimate 5 days, perhaps 6. Admiral Reyes was silent for a moment, her eyes unfocused, as she appeared to be making rapid calculations. Ambassador, I need to be absolutely clear about what you're asking. Oria has maintained a strict policy of non-intervention and pacifism for millennia. Are you requesting military assistance from Earth? This was the moment Sarah had been preparing for and dreading. She chose her words carefully. Admiral Oria remains committed to its principles of peace and preservation of all life. However, we acknowledge that we cannot defend ourselves against this threat. We formally request Earth's assistance in protecting our people and our world in whatever form you deem most appropriate. It was a deliberate diplomatic ambiguity, not explicitly requesting military intervention, but not excluding it either. Admiral Reyes studied her for a long moment. You're asking us to interpret that rather broadly, Ambassador. I'm asking you to help us survive while honoring the spirit of our principles, Sarah replied honestly. We have no right to dictate your methods, only to express our profound hope that violence can be minimized. A hint of a smile touched the Admiral's lips. Skillfully navigated, Ambassador. Her expression became serious again. I need to consult with my command staff and planetary leadership. Can you maintain this link? Yes. It's stable now that the connection has been re-established. Good. I'll return within the hour. Reyes out. The projection faded, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts and the softly humming warp link. She moved to the window, gazing out at the peaceful cityscape below. Orions went about their daily lives unaware of the danger approaching or the momentous decision she had just made. For better or worse, she had opened a door that had been closed for centuries. True to her word, Admiral Reyes reappeared precisely 1 hour later. Her expression was resolute, and Sarah could see other figures moving in the background of the projection, a command center of some kind filled with uniformed humans. Ambassador Nell, I've consulted with Earth's United Defense Council and received authorization for immediate action. The EDO Expeditionary Fleet, Fury's Edge, is being deployed to Orion space. Sarah felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. How soon can they arrive? That's the good news. We've made significant advances in warp technology since our last contact with Aurea. The vanguard of our fleet can be in your system within 48 hours. The main battle group will follow 12 hours later. Sarah couldn't hide her surprise. That's considerably faster than I had anticipated. Admiral Reyes's expression was grave. The situation demands it. Ambassador, I need to be direct with you. The assistance we're sending is primarily military in nature. Our analysis of the Karvok tactics on Vespera indicates they will not respond to diplomatic overtures. They targeted civilian population centers, first specifically to maximize casualties and break morale. Sarah felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. I understand. However, Reyes continued, we respect Aurea's cultural stance on warfare. Our operational parameters will emphasize defensive positioning, minimizing collateral damage, and protecting civilian populations. We'll attempt to disable rather than destroy Karvok vessels where possible, but I cannot guarantee that there will be no casualties. My council will find this difficult to accept, Sarah admitted. They may find extinction more difficult, Reyes replied not unkindly. Ambassador, we need your cooperation to make this work. Your people have no experience with modern warfare, and I have no desire to turn your peaceful world into a battlefield. Can you coordinate with us to establish safe zones, evacuation protocols, and ground support for our operations? Sarah straightened her shoulders. Yes, Admiral. I'll do whatever is necessary to protect my people. Good. Reyes's expression softened slightly. My grandfather used to tell me stories about Aurea, the crystal forests, and the philosophical texts your scholars sent to Earth centuries ago. They helped shape our own ethical frameworks for interstellar engagement. We haven't forgotten that connection. The statement caught Sarah by surprise. Thank you for telling me that, Admiral. 48 hours, Ambassador. Have your people ready. Reyes out. As the projection faded, Sarah sat heavily in her chair. The humans were coming far sooner than she had anticipated, and with a decidedly martial purpose. Now, she faced the daunting task of preparing her pacifist world for the arrival of warriors from a death world. The news of Earth's impending arrival shattered the placid rhythm of Orion society. When Sarah brought the information to the Council of Nine, the reaction was immediate and divided. Some counselors were outraged at what they perceived as an invitation to violence. Others were quietly relieved that help was coming, even as they struggled with the philosophical implications. First Elder Thorin, to Sarah's surprise, was among the pragmatists. What's done is done, he declared, silencing the debate. We now face the reality that armed defenders will soon arrive in our skies, followed closely by hostile invaders. We must prepare our people. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of activity. Sarah worked with civic leaders to establish emergency protocols, something Aurea had never needed before. The concept of designated shelter areas was foreign to a society that had never experienced warfare, but the Orions' natural intelligence and adaptability served them well. Artists and engineers worked together to convert the subterranean levels of major buildings into protected spaces. Medical practitioners studied emergency first aid procedures from databases that hadn't been accessed in generations. Throughout it all, Sarah maintained regular contact with Admiral Reyes via the warp link, coordinating preparations and sharing information about Orion population centers and critical infrastructure. The Admiral, for her part, provided increasingly detailed information about the approaching human fleet and their defensive strategies. We've deployed sensor buoys at the edge of your system, Reyes explained during one such communication. They'll give us early warning when the Karvok arrive and they're already gathering data on Karvok communication frequencies and weapon signatures from the Vespera conflict. Have you had any success contacting the Karvok directly? Sarah asked. Despite everything, she still held out hope for a diplomatic solution. Admiral Reyes's expression was grim. We've attempted to open communications on all standard frequencies. They respond with automated threats demanding immediate surrender of all territory and resources. So there is no chance of negotiation. Not with their current leadership, no. Reyes hesitated, then added, Ambassador, I need to prepare you for what's coming. The humans you're about to meet, they're professional soldiers trained for exactly this kind of intervention. They may seem intense by Orion standards. Sarah nodded. I've studied human culture, Admiral. I'll ensure our people understand that your intensity is in our defense. As the deadline approached, a tense anticipation gripped Lumina. Citizens gathered in public spaces, their eyes turned skyward. Sarah stood on the observation deck of the Unity Spire with First Elder Thorin and several council members watching the heavens. Will we see them arrive? Counselor Lyra asked, her young voice betraying her nervousness. Admiral Reyes said their transition from warp would be visible, Sarah replied. They'll emerge approximately 300,000 kilometers from Aurea to avoid any gravitational interference. As if on cue, a series of flashes lit up the distant sky, brilliant points of blue-white light that pulsed and then stabilized into visible shapes. Gasps and murmurs spread through the watching crowds as the vanguard of Earth's fleet appeared in Orion space. Even at this distance, the human vessels were impressive, sleek, angular ships, with a utilitarian design philosophy completely unlike the organic aesthetics of Orion architecture. Sarah counted at least 12 smaller vessels, escorting 3 larger ships, all bearing the distinctive blue and silver markings of the Earth Defense Organization. The warp link at Sarah's side activated, and Admiral Reyes's face appeared in the projection. Ambassador, we've arrived. The Vanguard is establishing a defensive perimeter around Aurea. The main battle group will join us tomorrow. Has there been any sign of the Karvok? Nothing yet, Admiral. Our astronomers are monitoring all approach vectors. Good. I'll be shuttling down to coordinate with you in person. Please prepare a landing area near your command center. The prospect of meeting the human admiral face-to-face sent a ripple of tension through the Orion officials present. Thorin, however, stepped forward. We will receive Admiral Reyes with full diplomatic honors, he declared. She comes in answer to our call for help, and we will show appropriate gratitude. Within hours, a human shuttle descended through Aurea's atmosphere, its passage marked by a soft sonic boom that startled birds from the crystal forests. It landed with precision on a designated platform near the Unity Spire, its engines emitting a low hum rather than the roar many had expected. Sarah led the welcoming delegation, her diplomatic training, keeping her posture composed despite her inner turmoil. The shuttle's hatch opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure, and Admiral Jade Reyes emerged, followed by a small group of officers. In person, the Admiral was a commanding presence taller than the average Orion, with the characteristic muscle density of humans from a high-gravity world. She wore a crisp blue uniform, adorned with symbols of rank and service that Sarah recognized from her studies. More surprising was the warmth in her dark eyes as she approached and offered a formal bow carefully matching the Orion greeting gesture. Ambassador Nal, Reyes said, "Thank you for your welcome. On behalf of Earth and the EDO, we are honored to stand with Aurea in this time of need." Sarah returned the bow. Admiral Reyes Aurea welcomes you with gratitude and hope. This is First Elder Thorin, head of our Council of Nine. Thorin stepped forward, his ancient eyes studying the human carefully, before offering a deeper bow than protocol required, a personal acknowledgement that did not go unnoticed by anyone present. Admiral, he said, his voice steady, you honor us with your swift response to our plea. Aurea has not known war for millennia. We find ourselves unprepared for this crisis. Admiral Reyes nodded solemnly. Understanding that is why we're here, First Elder. My people remember what it means to fight, so that others need not learn. It was skillfully said, acknowledging Earth's martial history, while framing it as a service rather than a threat. Sarah saw tension ease from several counselors' postures. The diplomatic reception continued inside the Unity Spire, where Admiral Reyes introduced her senior officers, Captain Mara Voss, her tactical officer, a compact woman with alert eyes and quick movements, Commander Elias Reed, her chief engineer, a tall man with dark skin and a thoughtful demeanor, and Lieutenant Sanjay Patel, her communications specialist, who immediately began establishing secure links between the human fleet and Orion infrastructure. While these introductions proceeded, Captain Voss approached Sarah quietly. "Ambassador, we've detected unusual energy signatures at the edge of your system. The Karvok may arrive sooner than expected." Sarah felt her hearts quicken. "How much sooner?" "Hard to say. Our sensors indicate they're using a form of stealth technology to mask their approach. Admiral Reyes didn't want to announce this to the full council yet. No need to cause panic." Sarah appreciated the consideration. "What do you need from us?" "We're positioning our scout ships in a defensive screen around Auria. It would help if your astronomers could share their observational data with our systems. They may notice patterns our automated sensors miss." "I'll arrange it immediately." Captain Voss nodded sharply. "Good. And Ambassador, when they come, it will happen very quickly. Your people should be in their designated safe areas before then." The warning proved prescient. Less than 6 hours after the humans' arrival, alarms sounded throughout the fleet. Admiral Reyes was in the middle of a strategy session with Orion officials when her communication device activated. "Admiral," Commander Reed's voice came through clearly. "Karvok scout vessels detected approaching from the ecliptic north. 3 ships moving fast." Reyes' demeanor shifted instantly from diplomatic to commanding. "Time to intercept. 17 minutes if they maintain current vector. Deploy Raven Squadron to intercept and assess. Weapons tight unless fired upon. I'm returning to the command ship." She turned to the Orions, her expression grave. "It begins. Please implement your civilian protection protocols immediately." As the Admiral departed, Sarah worked with council members to activate the emergency broadcast system. Across Lumina, and beyond Orions, moved with surprising orderliness toward their designated shelters. Sarah remained in the Unity Spire's command center, which had been hastily converted to monitor the developing situation. Through link displays provided by the humans, she watched as the 3 Karvok scout ships approached Auria. They were sleek, predatory vessels with distinctive crimson markings, exactly as intelligence had described. The human interceptors moved to challenge them, taking up blocking positions that would prevent a direct approach to the planet. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then, without warning or provocation, the Karvok vessels opened fire, brilliant beams of energy lancing out toward the human ships. The Earthers' response was immediate and precise. Their vessels banked and rolled with astonishing agility, returning fire with weapons that seemed calibrated to disable rather than destroy. One Karvok ship lost propulsion and began drifting. Another suffered visible damage to its weapons array. The third turned and accelerated away, presumably to report back to the main Karvok fleet. "They're testing our defenses," Captain Voss explained, as she joined Sarah at the monitoring station. "Probing for weaknesses, evaluating our capabilities." "And what will they have learned?" Sarah asked. Captain Voss's expression was grim, but satisfied. "That Auria is not the easy target they expected." The next 12 hours brought the arrival of Earth's main battle group, a formidable collection of vessels ranging from nimble corvettes to the massive flagship Concord. A vessel nearly 2 kilometers in length. Even as they established defensive formations around Auria, the first major wave of Karvok ships appeared on the long-range sensors. 27 vessels. Lieutenant Patel reported during an emergency briefing, including 3 Dreadnought-class ships, significantly larger than anything they deployed against Vespera. Admiral Reyes, now commanding from the Concord, addressed the gathered Orion leaders via holographic projection. They'll be within weapons range in approximately 10 hours. We're deploying our forces to create layered defensive screens around your world. Our primary objective is to prevent any Karvok ships from reaching orbital range. First Elder Thorin, who had surprised everyone with his calm, practical leadership during the crisis, asked the question many were thinking. "And if they break through your defenses, Admiral?" "They won't," Reyes replied, with quiet certainty. "But we're stationing our ground support teams near your major population centers as a precaution. Captain Voss will remain planetside to coordinate." The preparations continued with increasing urgency. Human Marines established perimeters around critical Orion infrastructure. Engineers worked alongside Orion artisans to reinforce shelter areas. Medical teams from both species shared knowledge and resources, preparing for casualties that everyone hoped would never come. Throughout it all, Sarah found herself working closely with Captain Mara Voss, the human tactical officer, whose efficiency was matched only by her surprising sensitivity to Orion concerns. Despite her obvious military background, Voss showed genuine interest in Orion culture, asking thoughtful questions during brief moments between crisis management. "Your crystal forests," Voss remarked during one such moment as they looked out over the iridescent canopy from the Unity Spire. "They're unlike anything I've seen on 100 worlds." "They're symbiotic organisms," Sarah explained, finding unexpected comfort in discussing something other than defensive preparations. "The crystalline structures channel sunlight to the living tissue beneath. They've evolved over millions of years. And they're what the Karvok want." It wasn't a question. "Partially," Sarah nodded. "The crystals can be processed into extremely efficient energy conductors. But I believe they also want Aurea because we represent everything they despise, a successful society, built on peace rather than dominance." Voss was silent for a moment. "We have a saying on Earth. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. Your people chose not to do nothing. You called for help. That takes its own kind of courage." Before Sarah could respond, alarms sounded throughout the command center. Lieutenant Patel's voice came through the communication system. "All units to battle stations. Karvok fleet accelerating. Time to engagement revised to 3 hours." The relative calm of preparation gave way to the tense reality of imminent conflict. Sarah watched through the command center's displays as the human fleet arranged itself in a complex three-dimensional defensive formation. Smaller, faster ships formed the outer perimeter, while the larger vessels, including the Concord, established a core defense around Aurea itself. "They're deploying into attack formations," Captain Voss noted, studying the tactical display showing the approaching Karvok vessels. 3 distinct battle groups, likely planning to pressure different sectors of our defense simultaneously. First, Elder Thorin, who had refused to take shelter despite his advanced age, stood beside Sarah. "Is there truly no possibility of communication, of finding a peaceful resolution even now?" Captain Voss's expression softened with something like sympathy. "Admiral Reyes is broadcasting cease approach warnings and offers of negotiation on all frequencies, First Elder. The Karvok respond only with demands for surrender." The final hours before engagement were surreal. Across Aurea, citizens huddled in shelters, their peaceful lives interrupted by a conflict most still struggled to comprehend. In orbit above them, human warships prepared for battle to defend a world not their own. And approaching through the darkness of space, the Karvok Dominion came to claim what they believed was theirs, by right of strength. The battle began suddenly, and with devastating intensity. The Karvok opened fire from extreme range, their weapons more powerful than even the humans had anticipated. Energy beams and projectiles streaked across space, met by the defensive countermeasures of Earth's fleet. In the command center, Sarah and the Orion leadership watched in horror and awe as the human ships moved with choreographed precision, absorbing and deflecting the initial assault, while positioning themselves for counterattack. Admiral Reyes's voice cut through the chaos, issuing clear commands that kept her forces coordinated despite the ferocity of the Karvak attack. "They're targeting our forward screen." Reyes noted, her voice calm despite the situation. "Raven and Eagle squadrons maintain formation, but increase evasive patterns. Crucible Group, prepare to reinforce Sector 7. The initial exchange lasted nearly 30 minutes, an eternity of light and destruction in the space above Aurea. When it ended, 3 human vessels showed significant damage, but the defensive screen remained intact. 5 Karvak ships had been disabled. "They're regrouping," Captain Voss observed, studying the tactical display. "That was just the first wave. They're testing our capabilities, looking for weaknesses." "And did they find any?" Sarah asked quietly. Voss's expression was grim. "Their weapons are more advanced than our intelligence suggested, and they seem willing to sacrifice their forward ships to probe our defenses. That suggests both technological confidence and a disregard for their own casualties, a dangerous combination." The respite was brief. The Karvak fleet reformed and launched a second, more concentrated attack, focusing their firepower on a specific sector of the human defense. This time, 2 Earth vessels suffered critical damage, forced to withdraw behind the protection of the larger ships. "They're adapting quickly." Admiral Reyes's voice came through the command channel. "All ships implement pattern Theta. We need to break their coordination." Sarah watched as the human fleet suddenly shifted tactics. Instead of maintaining their defensive screen, several smaller ships accelerated directly toward the Karvak formation, executing maneuvers that seemed impossibly precise. They darted between enemy vessels, forcing the Karvak to adjust their fire or risk hitting their own ships. "Hit and run," Captain Voss explained, noting Sarah's questioning look. "Disrupt their formations, prevent them from concentrating their firepower." The tactic worked, but at a cost. One of the human corvettes took a direct hit and disappeared in a flash of expanding debris. Sarah heard Captain Voss whisper something under her breath, a prayer or remembrance for the lost crew. For hours, the battle continued in this manner. Thrust and counter-thrust periods of furious exchange, followed by tactical repositioning. The human fleet fought with remarkable discipline, protecting Aurea at the cost of damage to their own vessels. The Karvak pressed their numerical advantage, seemingly indifferent to their losses, as long as they pushed the defensive line back. Then, something changed. The largest Karvak vessel, a massive dreadnought near the center of their formation, began to emit unusual energy signatures. "They're charging something big," Lieutenant Patel reported, his voice tense. "Energy readings off the scale. Could be a planet-killer class weapon." Sarah felt her blood run cold. "They would destroy what they came to conquer." "If they can't have it, no one will," Captain Voss replied grimly. "Admiral, are you seeing this?" "We see it," Reyes confirmed. "All ships' priority target is the Karvak flagship. Concentrate fire on their primary weapon systems." The human fleet responded immediately, adjusting their formation to focus attack on the Karvak dreadnought. But the enemy had anticipated this, surrounding their flagship with a screen of defensive vessels that absorbed the brunt of the assault. "We can't get through their screen in time," Commander Reed reported. "That weapon will be fully charged in approximately 12 minutes. A moment of silence followed. Then Admiral Reyes's voice, calm but resolute. "Implement Shadow Protocol." Voss prepped the ambassador for direct communication. Captain Voss turned to Sarah, her expression intense. "Ambassador, the Admiral needs you on the Concord immediately. We have a plan, but it requires diplomatic intervention." "I don't understand." "There's no time to explain. Trust us." Voss glanced at First Elder Thorin. "Sir, with your permission, we need to evacuate the ambassador to our flagship." Thorin studied the tactical display, then nodded gravely. "Go, Sarah. Whatever they're planning, we have run out of alternatives." Minutes later, Sarah found herself aboard a small, heavily shielded human shuttle, accelerating away from Aurea's atmosphere toward the massive form of the Concord. Through the viewport, she could see the battle-raging flashes of weapons fire, the graceful and terrible dance of ships in combat. "What is Shadow Protocol?" She asked Captain Voss, who piloted the shuttle with the same precision she brought to everything. A high-risk tactical maneuver. Voss replied, her attention focused on navigating through the chaos. We've deployed 3 stealth corvette ships with experimental cloaking technology. They're positioning themselves near the Karvok flagship, while the main battle draws attention away from them. To do what? To create a momentary gap in their shields, just enough for a direct communication link. Voss glanced at Sarah. And that's where you come in. The Admiral believes the Karvok commander might respond to a last-minute diplomatic overture, if only out of curiosity. It would buy us precious minutes to get our corvettes in position. The logic was sound, if desperate. I'll do whatever is needed, Sarah said firmly. The shuttle docked with the Concord, amid the chaos of battle. Inside, the human flagship was a model of controlled urgency crew members, moving with purpose systems, functioning smoothly despite the crisis. Admiral Reyes met them on the bridge, her uniform slightly disheveled but her presence commanding as ever. "Ambassador," she greeted Sarah briskly. "Thank you for coming. Our stealth corvettes will create a communication window in approximately 3 minutes. When they do, you'll have a direct channel to the Karvok commander. Your job is simple but vital: keep them talking. Every second you can delay them gives our ships more time to get into position." "What should I say?" Sarah asked, her diplomatic training asserting itself despite her anxiety. "Whatever will intrigue them enough to listen. Offer terms, appeal to reason, invoke galactic law, anything that might make them pause. The Karvok respects strength and cleverness if nothing else. Show them both." It was a desperate gambit, but Sarah understood its necessity. She took position at the communication station, as indicated, reviewing the hastily prepared notes on Karvok cultural references and known psychological patterns. "Corvettes in position," a tactical officer reported. "Initiating shield disruption in 3, 2, 1. "Channel open," Lieutenant Patel announced from a nearby station. "You're connected to the Karvok flagship, Ambassador." Sarah took a deep breath and activated the visual feed. The screen before her flickered, then resolved into the image of a Karvok commander, a powerfully built being with gray-scaled skin, prominent cranial ridges, and eyes that gleamed with cold intelligence. "I am Ambassador Sarah Nall of Aurea," she began, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. "To whom do I have the honor of speaking?" The Karvok's expression, registered surprise quickly masked by contempt. "I am Warlord Jarkath of the Dominion. Your attempt at delay is noted, Orion. It will not save you. This is not merely delay, Warlord. This is an opportunity for resolution without further bloodshed. Surely, a commander of your obvious tactical skill can appreciate the value of efficiency." A flicker of interest crossed the Karvok's alien features. "You have brought Deathworlders to fight your battle, yet you speak of peace curious." "We sought protection, not war," Sarah replied. "The humans defend us because they value what we offer: the galaxy, knowledge, art, philosophical exchange. What do you value, Warlord, beyond conquest?" On a secondary screen, Sarah could see the tactical display showing the human stealth corvettes maneuvering into critical positions around the Karvok flagship. She needed to keep Jarkath engaged. "Strength is the only truth in this galaxy," the Karvok replied. "Your pacifism is weakness masked as virtue." "Yet here we are," Sarah countered, "a pacifist world that has summoned sufficient strength to challenge the Dominion. Perhaps there is value in diverse approaches to existence." Jarkath made a sound that might have been amusement. "You hide behind human weapons while preaching philosophy. The irony is not lost on me, Ambassador." Sarah saw Admiral Reyes signal that the corvettes needed 30 more seconds. She reached into her diplomatic pouch and withdrew a small scroll, a symbol of Orion governance rarely shown to outsiders. "This is the Compact of Aurea," she said, holding it where Jarkath could see. "For 5,000 years it has guided our civilization in peace and prosperity. I offer you its final clause as a foundation for negotiation." The Karvok's eyes narrowed. "You would surrender?" "I would find common ground," Sarah corrected. "The final clause states, When paths diverge, seek not to force convergence but to build bridges across the divide. Your path and ours may differ, Warlord, but destruction serves neither. As she spoke, Sarah saw Admiral Reyes give the signal. On the tactical display, the human stealth corvettes activated their primary weapons, not targeting the Karvok flagship's hull, but focusing concentrated energy on specific points in its shield matrix. Jarkath must have received an alert because his expression suddenly hardened. "Enough of this charade, your words are—" His image dissolved into static as explosions rocked his vessel. Through the Concorde's viewports, Sarah could see brilliant flashes of light erupting around the Karvok flagship as the human corvettes executed their attack with perfect coordination. The massive dreadnought's weapon ports, which had been glowing with building energy, flickered and dimmed. "Direct hit on their primary weapon systems," the tactical officer reported. "Their planet killer is offline." Admiral Reyes allowed herself a tight smile. "All ships press the advantage. Focus fire on their command and control systems." The battle shifted dramatically. With their superweapon neutralized and their flagship damaged, the Karvok formation began to fragment. The human fleet, which had been fighting defensively, now executed a coordinated offensive push, targeting critical systems rather than attempting to destroy the enemy vessels outright. "They're breaking formation," Commander Reed announced. "Several smaller ships are already jumping to FTL. Their command structure is faltering." Sarah watched in amazement as the Karvok fleet, which had seemed so implacable, began a disorganized retreat. Some vessels continued fighting, but increasingly they did so individually, rather than as a coordinated force. A final desperate salvo from the damaged Karvok flagship struck the Concorde, causing the lights to flicker and the deck to shudder beneath their feet. For a moment, chaos reigned on the bridge as systems reset and damage reports flowed in. When the situation stabilized, Admiral Reyes turned to Sarah. "Your timing with that scroll was perfect, Ambassador. It gave our corvettes exactly the distraction they needed to get into final position." "I was merely following your strategy," Sarah replied modestly. "No," Reyes shook her head. "You showed true courage up there. That's something every soldier respects, especially us Deathworlders." The term, which had once seemed pejorative to Sarah, now carried a note of pride in the Admiral's voice. Within hours, the battle had definitively turned. The Karvok flagship, its primary systems crippled, began a slow retreat covered by its remaining escort vessels. Smaller enemy ships continued to jump to FTL, abandoning the fight. The human fleet maintained pressure, ensuring the Karvok withdrawal was complete. As the immediate threat receded, the focus shifted to recovery and assessment. The Concorde returned to high orbit around Aurea, and Sarah accompanied Admiral Reyes back to the surface to report to the Council of Nine. The scene that greeted them was one of cautious celebration. Aurians emerged from their shelters, gazing at the sky where flashes of battle had been visible even from the surface. The Unity Spire, which had served as an emergency command center, now became a focal point for coordination of recovery efforts. First, Elder Thorin welcomed them in the council chamber, his ancient face showing both relief and lingering concern. "Admiral, Ambassador Aurea owes you both a debt that cannot be measured. Is it truly over?" "The immediate threat has been repelled," Admiral Reyes confirmed. "The Karvok have withdrawn from your system, and we're maintaining pursuit to ensure they don't regroup for another attack." "And the cost?" Thorin asked quietly. Reyes's expression sobered. "We lost 3 ships and have 12 more with significant damage. Casualty reports are still coming in, but we estimate approximately 200 of my people gave their lives for Aurea's defense." Silence fell over the council chamber, a weighted moment of recognition for the sacrifice made by the humans. Then, to Sarah's surprise, First Elder Thorin stood and performed a ceremonial bow of the deepest respect, one typically reserved for ancestors and spiritual leaders. "Earth has honored the ancient bond between our worlds at the cost of blood," he said formally. "Aurea recognizes this sacrifice and will remember it for all time." One by one, the other council members rose and matched Thorin's gesture of respect. Admiral Reyes stood at attention, accepting the honor with appropriate gravity. "The defense of peace is a burden we share willingly," she replied. The days that followed brought a remarkable transformation to Orion society. As human engineers established repair yards in orbit to service their damaged vessels, Orion artisans and scholars flocked to assist, eager to learn and contribute. What began as necessary cooperation evolved into genuine cultural exchange. Human Marines, initially viewed with trepidation by many Orions, soon became welcome guests in the Crystal Cities. They marveled at Orion art and architecture while sharing stories of Earth and its many colonies. In turn, Orion studied the human vessels with fascination, incorporating elements of their utilitarian design aesthetic into new civic projects. Sarah found herself at the center of this cultural intersection, working closely with both Admiral Reyes and the Council of Nine to establish frameworks for ongoing cooperation. It was challenging, rewarding work that drew on all her diplomatic skills, but she found unexpected support from Captain Mara Voss, who had developed genuine respect for Orion culture during the crisis. "Your people have a gift for finding beauty in function," Voss remarked, as they walked through one of Lumina's parks, where human medical units had established a field hospital. Orion healers worked alongside human doctors, sharing knowledge and techniques. "They've been integrating our emergency medical procedures into their own healing traditions, creating something new and better than either approach alone. That has always been Oria's greatest strength," Sarah replied. "We absorb and synthesize, finding connections where others see only differences." "It's a strength Earth could learn from," Voss admitted. "We tend to approach problems like Deathworlders, looking for threats to overcome rather than harmonies to discover." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a messenger, one of Thorne's aides bearing a formal invitation. "The Council requests your presence, Ambassador. Admiral Reyes as well. A matter of some importance has arisen." They found the Council of Nine assembled in formal session, their ceremonial robes indicating a significant decision had been reached. Admiral Reyes joined them, having been similarly summoned from the Concord. First, Elder Thorne stood as they entered. "Admiral Reyes, Ambassador Null, the Council has been in deliberation since the withdrawal of the Karvok forces. Recent long-range scans indicate their fleet has regrouped at the edge of the Auriga sector. While they have not yet moved to re-engage, their presence represents an ongoing threat to Auria and other peaceful worlds." Admiral Reyes nodded grimly. "Our intelligence suggests the same. The Karvok are a hierarchical species. Their withdrawal was a tactical necessity, not a fundamental change in their expansionist ideology. They will return, if not to Auria, then to some other world they deem vulnerable." "Precisely our conclusion," Thorne agreed. "Which is why the Council has made a historic decision. For the first time in over 900 years, Auria will amend its compact." A murmur ran through the chamber. The Orion Compact was the foundation of their society, a living document that had evolved over millennia, but always maintained its core principles of peace and non-intervention. "The events of recent days have forced us to confront an uncomfortable truth," Thorne continued. "True peace cannot exist without the capacity to defend it. While Auria remains committed to the pursuit of diplomatic solutions and cultural exchange, we recognize that there are forces in our galaxy that respond only to strength." He gestured to an Orion scribe who stepped forward with a ceremonial scroll, the physical embodiment of the compact. "By unanimous vote, the Council has approved the addition of what we are calling the Earth Clause. It reads, while Auria shall maintain its commitment to peaceful resolution of all conflicts, we acknowledge our responsibility to stand with like-minded worlds against those who would destroy the very foundation of peace. To this end, Auria establishes a permanent alliance with Earth, a world that has demonstrated its willingness to protect the light of knowledge and culture throughout the galaxy." Admiral Reyes's expression registered surprise, then deep honor. "First Elder, this is unexpected. Earth would be proud to formalize such an alliance, but we want to be clear that we make no demands upon Aurea. Our defense of your world was freely given. And freely accepted, Thorin replied. But the galaxy has changed, Admiral. Perhaps it always was changing, while we remained in our crystal towers, content in our isolation. No more. If peace is to endure, those who value it must stand together. The formalization of the Aurea Earth Compact took place 3 days later under the soaring crystal arches of the Hall of Unity. Representatives from both worlds gathered to witness the historic moment, Aurian counselors in their ceremonial robes, human officers in dress uniforms. The atmosphere was solemn, yet hopeful, a recognition of new possibilities arising from crisis. Sarah, as the architect of the initial contact, stood beside Admiral Reyes at the central podium. Before them lay 2 copies of the Alliance document, one inscribed on traditional Aurian crystal parchment, the other printed on Earth's formal diplomatic paper. First, Elder Thorin spoke first, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. For 5,000 years, Aurea has been a beacon of peace and learning in the galaxy. Today, we recognize that to remain such a beacon, we must sometimes stand against the darkness that would extinguish all lights. In Earth, we have found not just defenders, but kindred spirits who value knowledge and diversity as we do, though they express these values in different ways. Admiral Reyes followed with her own address. Earth's history is one of struggle and conflict, but also of constant striving toward peace and understanding. In Aurea, we see the embodiment of what we have always aspired to be, a civilization where wisdom and compassion guide every action. This alliance represents not just mutual protection, but mutual inspiration. Together, they signed the documents, Sarah and Thorin for Aurea Reyes, and her senior staff for Earth. As the final signatures were applied, a cheer erupted from the assembled crowd, echoing through the crystalline hall in a symphony of hope. The formal ceremony gave way to celebration, a blending of Aurian and human traditions that symbolized the new relationship between their worlds. Aurian crystal singers performed alongside human musicians, creating harmonies never before heard. Scholars from both species engaged in animated discussion, finding common ground in their pursuit of knowledge. In a quiet moment amid the festivities, Sarah found herself standing with Admiral Reyes on a balcony, overlooking the crystal forests. The setting sun cast rainbow patterns through the translucent canopy, a natural light show that drew gasps of appreciation from the human visitors. "Beautiful," Reyes murmured. "Worth defending." "Yes," Sarah agreed. "Though I've been thinking about what that truly means to defend something. Before all this, I believed defense meant preservation, keeping things exactly as they were. Now I see that true defense means allowing for growth and change, while protecting the essential core of what matters." Reyes nodded thoughtfully. "On Earth, we have an old saying, 'The tree that bends survives the storm.' Flexibility is not weakness, it's a different kind of strength. Your fleet is called Fury's Edge," Sarah noted. "It seemed so contrary to everything Aurea represents. Yet I've come to see that Fury has its place, righteous anger, in defense of those who cannot defend themselves. And we've learned that fury without purpose or compassion is just destruction," Reyes replied. "Your people have reminded us why we fight, not for power or territory, but for the freedom to create beauty and pursue wisdom." Their contemplation was interrupted by the arrival of Captain Voss, who approached with a datapad in hand. "Admiral Ambassador, I apologize for the intrusion, but our long-range scouts have detected something you both should see." The datapad displayed sensor readings from the edge of the Auriga sector. The Karvok fleet had begun to move again, but not toward Aurea, as feared. Instead, they appeared to be consolidating around a different star system. "They're regrouping," Reyes observed, "likely planning their next conquest attempt. This fight isn't over." "No," Sarah agreed, a new resolve in her voice. "But neither are we unprepared. The warp link between our worlds remains active. Earth's fleet stands ready, and Aurea is no longer simply waiting for threats to arrive. We are reaching out to other peaceful worlds, creating a network of mutual support and warning." Captain Voss studied the sensor readings with professional intensity. The Karvok miscalculated when they attacked Aurea. They expected an easy victory over a pacifist world. Instead, they awakened a new alliance, one that combines Aurian wisdom with Earth's defensive capabilities. And perhaps, added Sarah, they've taught both our peoples something valuable in the process. Earth has been reminded why peace is worth fighting for. Aurea has learned that peace sometimes requires the courage to stand against those who would destroy it. As the celebration continued around them, the three stood in thoughtful silence, watching the sun set over the crystal forests of Aurea. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, diplomatic, strategic, cultural. The Karvok remained a threat, and other dangers would inevitably arise in a complex galaxy. But for this moment, in the glow of the crystal twilight, the alliance between the peace-loving scholars of Aurea and the battle-hardened defenders of Earth stood as proof that diversity could indeed be strength, and that the guardians of peace need not always be peaceful themselves. Far beyond Aurea, at the edge of the Auriga sector, the remnants of the Karvok fleet regrouped around their damaged flagship. In the command chamber, Warlord Jarkath reviewed the tactical data from their failed conquest, his expression unreadable to his subordinates. The Aurians were supposed to be defenseless. His second-in-command ventured cautiously. How could they summon Earth's fleet so quickly? Jarkath's gaze remained fixed on the display showing the new alliance being broadcast across subspace channels. They remembered something we forgot, he said finally. Old connections forged before they became weak. A mistake we will not make again. He turned to his tactical officer. Prepare a complete analysis of human battle tactics. I want strengths, weaknesses, patterns of engagement, and find me everything we know about other worlds that maintain relations with Earth. Are we planning another assault on Aurea, Warlord? No, Jarkath replied, his eyes narrowing. We are planning something much larger. The humans have shown their hand. They will defend worlds that cannot defend themselves. So we will force them to defend too many at once. As orders went out and the Karvok fleet began its slow reorganization, the Warlord returned his attention to the recording of the Aurian ambassador, the one who had distracted him at the critical moment, allowing the human stealth ships to strike. There was something to be learned there as well, something about the power of words when backed by unexpected action. The next confrontation would not be like this one, but it would come as surely as stars burned and died in the endless cycle of the cosmos. And when it did, both the scholars of Aurea and the warriors of Earth would face their greatest test, not just of strength or strategy, but of the principles that had brought them together in the first place.